Okay, so it is Pride Month, and one thing I will say is that this video is not meant to hurt anyone or offend anyone in the LGBTQ community. But just to make sure, if your feelings don't get hurt, make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe. That way I know I did not offend any of you guys. But if I did, well, I'm sorry, I guess. Anyways, let's just jump straight into the story. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to an insane video. So today's story takes place back when I was in grade 10. When I was in grade 10, one thing I will say was that bullying was very common. As much as I know that bullying isn't a good thing, being bullied was just a very common thing throughout my high school. I won't say I got bullied as much, but I will say this much, I did get picked on. But the only reason I got picked on was becoming a YouTuber. So to all the bullies that watch my videos now, get wrecked. I'm a YouTuber. Sorry, that's not the point, but going on. Anyways, I remember back when I was in grade 10, it was Pride Month like it is right now. And basically what ended up happening was that, let's just say, the LGBTQ community in our school really had a voice. And by having a voice, I mean, they always had a voice, but let's just say it got to the point where they were pushing it down people's throats. Apparently, one thing the LGBTQ was trying to do was make an assembly where basically they would have, like, you know, a trans person come in and talk about them coming out. And also they tried to get like drag queens to come into the school. And I know this is a very common issue nowadays, and I just want to say this is really nothing new, because I remember back when I was in grade 10, they actually managed to somehow get the assembly of them bringing drag queens, furries, and let's just say people in the LGBTQ community to speak up. And when I first heard about this, I thought, oh great, just another assembly that I'm gonna skip. Now, no, I am not in any way homophobic. It's just, honestly, one thing I realized growing up was that I grew up in a really strict family home, and that I grew up really not understanding the LGBTQ community. Hell, even nowadays I don't fully understand it. But one thing I will say is that I was going to skip the assembly, and I remember when it was the day of the assembly, I heard a lot of people in the football team deciding to actually start a riot. Now, I have no idea why the football team wanted to riot. It made no sense to me, but at the same time, I guess they just wanted to goof around, which made sense because, you know, it was not uncommon for them to do that. So I remember around lunchtime, before the assembly started, because the assembly started right after lunch, I was in the cafeteria eating my sandwich, and I was just sitting down doing my own thing. And one thing I realized was that when I was sitting in the cafeteria was that there were some people smoking outside, smoking a Zaza, if you know what I mean. And they were talking about basically how it's super unfair that the LGBTQ community gets to have an assembly, but when it comes to something about like suicide and stuff, they didn't get an assembly. I have no idea, but one thing was for sure, they were very upset about something. So me listening in, I remember I decided to kind of lean towards the window to understand what was going on. And I remember there was one really loud kid that was super upset and super angry about this LGBTQ community, that he really wanted to do something to really piss him off. Now, when I heard about this, I thought maybe I should say something, but obviously I was in grade 10. I mostly kept to myself like other high schoolers would, and I realized that it was really not my place to say anything. So going on, I remember the bell rang, and basically I got up and started getting ready to go to the classroom to get ready for the assembly. When I started walking to the classroom though, I remember there was one really angry kid that walked right past me, and he was the one that was basically talking all the smack about, you know, the LGBTQ. And I remember he bumped into me and said, "Watch it, freak," and kept walking. But one thing I realized about him when I looked at him was that he had a tattoo on his chest. And the tattoo this kid had on his chest was not a normal tattoo that anyone should have. If anyone knows World War II, let's just say having a Nazi logo tattooed on you was not a good thing, at least in my mind. So going on, I remember I kind of just decided, you know what? I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to go to my class and do my own thing. And that's what I did. I went to class. I ended up sitting in my chair, and let's just say the teacher instantly walks in wearing an all rainbow outfit saying, "Okay, class, let's start heading for the assembly. Woo, Pride Month." And I remember everyone looked at her with a blank face as if we did not care. We all stood up, started lining up, and started heading towards the assembly. When we got to the gym, we all ended up sitting in there, sitting on the bleachers, and we all sat down and just basically watched this whole thing go down. They were playing music, you know, throwing flags around and all this stuff. And then this is where the story gets really intense, because I remember out of nowhere, when we were all sitting down on the bleachers, there were two drag queens walking up on stage and basically holding a giant rainbow flag. Now, if you guys don't know what the rainbow flag stands for, it stands for the LGBTQ. I don't know why the rainbow is the LGBTQ logo, but I guess they have like colors to coordinate, like, you know, what gender's which. Anyways, I remember when the flag came in and they were holding it up, and this girl was giving a speech about, you know, coming out and basically being yourself. I remember the kid that was super upset from outside the cafeteria ends up standing up and running and sprinting through the rainbow flag. When he sprinted through, I remember everyone started cheering and everyone started yelling, celebrating, and all the jocks were standing up going, ooh, 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 let's go. But then what this kid did next was not normal, because I remember the drag queen that was, you know, giving a speech ended up walking up to the kid saying, oh, like, are you coming out? Is that what you're doing right now? Oh my goodness, tell us what gender you are. And I remember this kid ended up basically grabbing the microphone saying, I am a male. I am only a male. And all of you guys need to literally go and fix yourselves. Pray the gay away. And he ended up pulling out a lighter and lighting up the rainbow flag and dropping it on the ground. This blew everyone's mind. And I remember everyone started freaking out when the rainbow flag was on fire, literally in the gymnasium. I remember teachers started standing up and everyone started freaking out, and kids actually started running out of the gym and sprinting away. And I want to say me, I didn't know what to do in the moment. So I ended up standing up and just literally running out of the school and running all the way across the street. And when I ran across the street, one thing I realized was that there were a lot of sirens, and I mean a lot of sirens coming down, and it was a lot of firefighters and cops came down, and the kid with the tattoo of a Nazi logo ended up actually getting arrested. Honestly, I'm not surprised because lighting anything in school is illegal, but man, that was the most insane Pride Month of my entire life. I will say this much. I understand that people are not willing to accept change in this world, and I get how, you know, times have changed from back then till now. But one thing I will say is that let's just all respect each other. Like, seriously, if you want to be something, be it. Okay, I swear the amount of times I get asked this question literally is going to make my head explode. Like, if I see this question one more time, I'm actually gonna block everybody on the damn internet. What are your pronouns? Like, are you joking? Like, why is this a question we have to ask nowadays? Like, I'm genuinely actually curious. Like, I get it, we have the whole LGBTQ situation going on in this world, but honestly, like, it gets to a point where it's over, or too much, I should say. And like, I get it, you know, 2021, you know, years are moving on, be accepting, all that stuff. Hell, we've been doing it for what, years now? Like, I remember back when I was in high school, I actually got really like picked on and stuff because of, if you guys don't know the old storylines, they're all on TikTok. But I'm gonna be honest, like, I've had my situations with the LGBTQ community. And then one thing I should mention is that I don't have any hate or whatsoever for them. Like, I think each of them are outstanding, and I feel great that they want to be a type of person in their own way. Like, that's good, you know, be what you want to be. That's something I always quoted back in my old videos. But to actually, you know, get to that point where you're shoving it down someone else's throat just because you want to make it full on a part of society is gonna be actually very concerning to a point. Like, I maybe sound like I'm ranting and not actually telling a story, but here's where the storyline starts. Like, I remember back in high school when I was just, you know, just chilling in grade 9, I remember sitting in like the hallway. We had this long hallway in our school where like there was a bunch of seats. It was near the theater class where a bunch of theater kids would go. And if you guys don't know, the theater classes were basically where all the LGBTQ people sat, like, all the time. Like, basically, if you were any way in part of the LGBTQ community, the theater classroom was like the best classroom to go to. Like, you automatic acceptance. Like, everyone could be whatever they want. Like, I remember one time actually going in there and seeing like 2 chicks make out, and honestly, that was not a sore sight to see. Anyways, like I was saying though, going on, I remember sitting in that hallway and I was just chilling, sitting, you know, doing my thing, vibing. I was playing on my 3DS actually. I remember I was playing Smash Bros. Shout out to those people who play Smash Bros, because seriously, Smash Bros is like the serious plug. And yeah, so basically I was just sitting on my 3DS, chilling and all that stuff. And I remember in our high school, this chick walked up to me, and this was no ordinary chick. Now, if you guys don't know, basically we had this like LGBTQ like club in our school, and it was held in the theater. Whoop-de-doo, big surprise. Anyways, yeah, so she came up to me, and this was no ordinary person, because she was actually like the head of the LGBTQ community, which is, you know, kind of a big deal. Like, let's just say if you say anything homophobic in front of her, she's gonna like go off at you and basically tear you to shreds, and basically bring up like, you know, Google searches on the LGBTQ community and stuff like that. Like, she would actually, like, let's just say she would shove it down your throat. Like, you're not gonna live tomorrow. And let's just say she wasn't really like liked at all in our school. Like, it got to a point where she would get bullied more than me, and that says a lot. Like, I actually generally felt bad for her, so I didn't make any sort of jokes. I didn't try to like hurt her feelings in any way, or actually make her feel hurt, because I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't that type of kid. Like, for God's sakes, I made YouTube videos in Call of Duty Black Ops 3. You really think I'm going to make fun of a person that's trying to just, you know, support what's right? In some people's eyes. I can't say to everyone, okay? I gotta make this video, you know, on both sides. I can't just, you know, show love for one direction. Anyways, I remember when I was just sitting there and she was just sitting beside me, I found it really odd of why she sat beside me. Like, I remember literally just looking at her, and then she would look at me, and it was kind of like a back and forth glance until she actually ended up speaking. But as she was like about to say something, she pulled out like a sheet of paper that was on like a clipboard, as if, you know, she was gonna like interview me for some like, I don't know, TV show or whatever. And then she said to me, so Bubba, I'm actually curious of a question if I can ask you. Now I remember really looking over and I'm like, what are you gonna ask me? Like I'm scared. Like I was worried already at that point, because, you know, any questions from this girl, I could either get totally canceled or just destroyed in school, which is, I guess, not a big deal compared to the internet. And she said to me, so like, what are your pronouns? Yes, she asked me the question that I am basically making this video about, because let's be real here, as we guys all know, it's been all over social media that everyone's asking, what are your pronouns? Like, congratulations, you want to know what I am. And I remember when she was showing me the sheet of paper that everyone was like, you know, saying what are your pronouns on, I remember looking through it, and literally it was everyone just kind of making jokes about it. Like, usually I don't like making jokes about the LGBTQ community. Like, it's not a good idea. Like, for God's sakes, they're actually like, you know, a group of people trying to do the right thing, and I respect it, like I said earlier. But I'm not gonna lie, this was hilarious. Some people were making jokes like they were an attack helicopter. Some were saying that they were ghosts. Like, there were some people even saying like they identify as a gaming PC. Like, like you already know people weren't being serious on the sheet, so I decided not to be serious as well. And I remember I wrote down like some joke that I remember watching on like some TV show. I don't know what show it was, but I remember I wrote down alpha male. And let's just say when I wrote down the word alpha male, it was probably the worst mistake I've ever done. Like, I'm gonna be honest, I think she got more angry at me than the guy who wrote attack helicopter, which is, my opinion, more funny and more out of pocket. But I guess that's a lie. Like, I'm not even joking. I remember she looked over at me and she's like, what did you just call yourself as? And I literally said alpha male, as if, you know, it's a joke. And I'm not gonna lie, guys, I looked like this, okay? If I came up to you and I looked like this and I said I'm an alpha male, are you actually gonna generally take me seriously? Like, let's be brutally honest here. Like, come on. No, there's no way. Anyways, yeah, so basically she got really mad, and I remember she was like looking at me and she's like, wait, so you called yourself the alpha male? Like, how could you do that? Like, that's like not right responsibility. And I don't know, she said a couple words I wasn't really listening to, because let's be honest, when these people in this community get on a rant, they go on a rant. Like, it's nonstop pop. But at the same time though, I was, you know, I did feel bad, because I'm gonna be honest, like it was kind of out of pocket. Like, I didn't think the word alpha male would be as bad as attack helicopter or gaming PC. I guess, you know, being identified as like an actual object compared to an alpha is a really big deal. Anyways, yeah, so basically I remember she got really mad, and then she got up and went to the theater classroom, and I was like, okay, you know, that's fine. You know, I guess, you know, it's just a long day, you know, I'm tired, I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna get ready to go home, blah blah blah. But as I was walking away from the bench that was in the hallway, she instantly came up with a bunch of different people, and oh my goodness, was I scared. I literally had like a whole horde of like LGBTQ members just like coming up to me, and I'm not gonna lie, I felt like it was like the movie 3000 when like Sparta was coming at like, you know, whatever the other person was. Like, let's just say it was concerning. So I remember just sitting there, and after they all came up, like, and they're all like basically like, you know, yelling at me and shoving it down my throat, like, hey, you gotta respect the LGBTQ community and stuff like that, and blah blah blah. And like it got to a point where I actually like generally got worried about my health and like my safety, because like I don't know what these guys could do, or what they could do. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be mean in any way, shape, or form. Like, I'm just trying to explain how my safety felt in that moment. And let's say I didn't feel safe. Anyways, they all like came around me. It came like a circle. They started yelling at me and stuff like that. And then I remember the principal walked up to me, and they're like, what's going on here? Like, hey, everyone move back. What's going on? What's going on? And I explained to the principal like how I said I'm the alpha male or whatever. And they like, you know, he kind of chuckled, but at the same time, he's like, you gotta talk to me in my office. So we went to the office, and then he basically like, it was explained to me how like you can't be making jokes like that. Like, this is a serious thing that they're like going through and stuff like that, and they want to feel respected. And I respected it. I was like, you know what, you're right, I shouldn't do that. 100%, you know, I agree. And yeah, basically to this day, like I try to like stay away from like, you know, really making stories about the LGBTQ community. But to be honest, I gotta be honest here, when I make these stories, like I want to be honest about what's going on, what happened in my life. And knowing how popular saying what are your pronouns in like every different platform is, I just want to express my storyline on it and basically just give my point across. But if you are in any way, shape, or form part of the LGBTQ community, or any form of community that you want to be in and stuff like that, just know like I support being what you want to be. I think it's a serious thing, and I do think like, you know, you can be what you want. You know what I mean? As for knowing the specifics of things like, you know, LGBTQ, I think there's more letters in there. I'm not sure. Like I said, I'm not like fully in-depth learned about it, and I'm not educated on it, which I should probably be eventually. But like I said, I'm not hating on anyone. I think everyone's outstanding their own way. So as you guys may know, it's still Pride Month. And actually, the more I think about it, I have a crazy story to tell you guys. But before I get into it, please don't cancel me. You gotta understand, this was back when, well, I guess bullying was considered good. And on top of that, honestly, this story story does get really intense, so I suggest you guys leave a like and subscribe. And to all the people a part of the LGBTQ watching this video, please watch the video through before you guys make an opinion on me. But anyways, let's just jump straight into it. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to an insane story. So today's story takes place back in my grade 9 year. Now, I'm not gonna lie, in grade 9, I looked like this. So obviously, I wasn't the slayer that I was supposed to be. Don't get me wrong, I still did a lot of the Devil's Tango, but not as much as I did in grade 10. Going on though, I remember in grade 9, I decided to take a course called drama. Now, drama is a course where it's basically theater, where basically you learn how to like basically act in a way. I don't know how else to explain it other than me trying to act wasn't the coolest thing to see. But the main reason why I actually took it was because I had a really bad stutter back when I was in high school. And me having a stutter back in high school wasn't a good thing because how else am I supposed to pull girls? I don't want to go all phase adapt on them. Anyways, going on with the story, I remember basically one time in drama, we were doing this like exercise where we had to read out a very long script. And me, well, with my stutter, it makes me a lot worse than how I'm actually supposed to. Like, I can read, but not that well with the stutter. So I remember I went up in front of the stage and I started basically talking. I started basically reading it out, but in some parts, I would randomly just have a stutter. And knowing this, I remember I saw some girls laughing, but then afterwards, there was one dude in my class that kept laughing at me for some reason. And he kept laughing to the point where he actually ended up saying, "Dude, like, you suck at reading." I remember when he said that, I kind of just froze and just got really awkward. I didn't know what to say and I didn't know why this dude was picking on me, like literally back off. But honestly, I guess he was just trying to get everyone's attention and be the class clown. And that's one thing I realized over the weeks of me going to class. The same guy would always, and I mean always, try to get attention from everyone. And it was so weird because he would walk in with the most weirdest outfits as if he was Lady Gaga. Like, I don't know what this dude's problem was, but in my mind, he was just being super weird and really toxic. I remember as weeks went on, we had this school play that was coming up. And obviously, the school play, everyone wants to be the main character, except me. I remember I didn't want to do it. And the play was Peter Pan, by the way, if you guys really want to know. And I remember I did not want to be Peter Pan. But obviously, don't get me wrong, a lot of people thought it would be funny for me to be Peter Pan because I was the most youthful looking. Like, I don't know, look at me and tell me if I should be Peter Pan. Like, in my opinion, I shouldn't be. And I remember my teacher ended up walking up to me in the middle of class and saying, "Oh, Bubba, I was wondering, do you want to be Peter Pan for this play? The whole class thinks it's a good idea for you to be." For me to be Peter Pan is what I told her after. "Yeah, I think you should be Peter Pan." I'm good, thanks, is what I ended up saying. And then I remember I ended up walking away and my teacher, she was disappointed. So what she decided to do next was pull the whole class together, basically making a class meeting with me standing in the middle and basically said, "Everyone, I think Bubba should be Peter Pan and I would need a raise of hands for everyone that agrees." I remember at that moment, since the teacher ended up saying something, the whole class ended up putting their hand up for me to be Peter Pan. And me, I was super embarrassed. But then obviously the one dude in my class realized that I was getting a lot of attention after the vote was done. And I remember when the vote was like basically over, all the students in my class ended up walking up to me saying how I should, prepare myself, how it's gonna be super fun. And honestly, it felt good to have a lot of attention. But honestly, when I saw this dude looking at me, I remember he walked up to me saying, "Huh, you're gonna be Peter Pan? You can't even freaking speak. You're such a loser." "Dude, what's your problem?" is what I told him afterwards. And he basically kept telling me, "What do you mean what's my problem? You're just a dumbass." Whoa, dude, like seriously, grow up, is what I told him. But obviously he wasn't having it and he just kept messing with me. And it got to the point where he actually got physical with me and pushed me on the ground. Now at this point, I'm not gonna lie, I have anger issues. I mentioned this in my other video. I don't like getting upset really easily, but I have that issue. So I remember when I stood back up, I remember I ended up pushing this guy on the ground and he ended up saying, "Huh, for a boy, you're really weak." And that's when I ended up getting on top of him and started punching him out. I'm not joking. I started punching his face over and over and over and over. And the teacher was out of the classroom for some reason, so I just kept going at it as all these guys were just looking at me thinking that this dude is batshit crazy. But anyways, I kept punching him and then one thing led to another. I remember there was a girl in my class who was a part of the LGBTQ club. She walked up to me saying, "Bubba, what are you doing? You would never hurt a girl." "What?" is what I said. "A girl? Where's the girl in the situation. And then I remember when I looked down, this guy was like, actually, I identify as a girl. No, you don't, is what I said. And then afterwards, let's just say I got a lot of drama happening in my class because, well, a lot of people in the class apparently was convinced he was a girl when it was very, very obvious that it was a dude. Like, I'm sorry, okay? If you sound like a man, look like a man, and have the genes of a man, you're probably a dude. And I'm not gonna lie, once again, this was back in grade 9, so don't, cancel me for this, but that was just my thought process back when I was younger. Anyways, after the whole situation happened, I remember I started panicking and thinking, why in the world does my whole class think this person's a girl? And then that's when I realized. He ended up basically saying, actually, I am a girl. I'm a transgender. You're a what? A transgender is what he said once again. And I wasn't convinced. I remember what I ended up doing was I ended up saying, wait, so you have a vagina. Is that what you're saying? No, I don't have one of those, but that doesn't define who I am. I mean, do you have tits? Is what I ended up saying afterwards. That doesn't identify who I am, is what he said once again. And I remember me back in grade 9, well, I was really hard-headed. So I remember I ended up basically right afterwards when he said that he didn't have either of those things, I ended up walking up to him and saying, then you're a dude. And it ended up walking away. When I said that, I remember my teacher just ended up walking back into the classroom. And right away, right as I said that, this dude that was really upset at me, claiming he was a transgender, ran up to me and punched me in the back of the head. Obviously, we both got in trouble. We ended up going back to the office. And when we went back to the office, I remember I ended up getting in trouble for basically hitting a girl. I remember my parents ended up getting a phone call and I was like really shook because there was no way that they were going to tell my parents I hit a girl. But they ended up doing that and my parents ended up coming to the school and I got in serious trouble. My parents ended up walking into the office saying, Bubba, why did you hit a girl? What? You would never hit a girl. Because I live with 4 sisters. So obviously me hitting a girl was really not the case ever. I was raised not to do that. But then afterwards, I remember my dad walked in really upset and he said, Bubba, where's the girl you hit? I ended up pointing at the dude that was sitting on the chair. And then that's when both my parents looked at me and started laughing. They said, no, seriously, where's the girl you hit? Mom, Dad, that's the girl apparently, is what I said afterwards. And then one thing led to another. Basically, my principal ended up explaining what a transgender was to my parents. And my parents are really strict and religious. So you already know my parents weren't going to be convinced. And one thing led to another. My parents ended up taking me out for ice cream. Yeah, I know. I am cool enough to go out for ice cream after beating someone up. But that was basically me back in high school bringing up a transgender. You gotta understand, back then things were very different. The LGBTQ stuff wasn't really in my mind. And to be honest, I wasn't educated on it. Obviously nowadays, I guess things are different, but cancel me if you want. All I'm gonna say is this was back in grade 9. And I'm 22 now, so come on, like, you guys can kind of calculate what's going on here. But I mean, if you guys do have any more questions about this story or want to know more, make sure you guys join me live on Kick streaming and telling these crazy stories face to face. Anyways, like I always say, just follow for more embarrassing stories. Peace out, guys.